Well, Paul, what about you? Let's bounce over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been?
Well, Mike, I'm here in West Michigan, and I'm sure everyone wants to know what the West Michigan weather watch is like this day. It is 45
Mm-hmm.
degrees, which doesn't sound great, but for early February in West Michigan, that's beautiful. And the sun is shining. As soon as we're done recording, I'm going to have to try to get outside and soak up some of this vitamin D that I've been lacking severely for the past few months. So, um,
Nice, nice.
but part of that means I get to stay home when it's not so nice out and read comics. I read a few things this weekend I wanted to talk about, one of which has been not shitting, has been sitting on my shelf for a few months. I bought it last summer, and I figured I should probably get around to reading it since it's written by our guest, Dave Baker, and that's Night Hunters
Ooh.
by Dave Baker with art by Alexis Zirift. This is a fantastic book. Again, it's like been sitting on my shelf. I was like, well, I have to read it so I can talk to Dave about it. And it's basically a sort of dystopian sci-fi cyberpunk kind of story set in Venezuela 100 years in the future. And it's this it gave me a lot of strong 2000 AD Judge Dredd vibes because it's like that world where you can either be a criminal or a cop. That's what your two choices in life. And really the only people that survive day to day are the people that join the police. And heavy political commentary, good mix of action. It's exactly the kind of story I like. And what I really enjoyed about it, as much as that story, is like Zirif's artwork captures that perfectly. It feels gritty and violent and dangerous, kind of um, like a renegade underground comic, in a way that kind of feels you don't want your parents finding you reading it. And those are the best comics,
Sure.
even
Yeah.
when you're 41
Yeah.
years old, like, why can't I let my mom know I'm reading this? So it's violent and gritty, and the use of color is amazing because you're set in this world that's so like gritty and grimy. Everything's really black and dark, and all the colors are almost like monochromatic. So everything's being lit by, feels like everything's lit by ambient light from like screens, and it gives it that sort of
Yeah.
lived in gritty world feeling. I know, Dave, like in the backup that you wrote for the book, you even name check John Wagner and Pat Mills, and that comes through really strongly. So I'm a huge 2000 AD fan. I'm a huge Judge Dredd fan, and this is right in my wheelhouse. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I also love Wagner and Mills and Iscara and
Mm.
Boland and a lot of those Mike McMahon,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
'80s era Judge Dredd people. I'm obsessed with. I recently read "Be Bold, Be Vigilant, Behave," the Pat Mills autobiography about
Yeah.
like the creation of 2000 AD, and uh, he's a fascinating person to me. The thing I like so much about Pat Mills, and I think the thing that influenced the book a lot, is that
Mhm.
like I like I like the way Pat Mills approaches things. I don't always actually love the way he writes. Sometimes I love it,
Hmm.
and sometimes I'm like, I see what you're doing, but it's like just it's like a weird middle ground where it's not dumb enough to be like, oh man, it's so charming because it's dumb, but it's too dumb to be highbrow, which
Mhm.
is this weird kind of like stopping and starting sometimes with me.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
Case in point, like I love Requiem Vampire Night. Have you read that, Paul?
No, I don't know that one. No.
Highly recommended.
Okay.
It's a French graphic novel series that he did um, with this guy named Olivier Ledroit. And the book is about a, I'm not going to use the technical term because it'll get us banned on certain platforms where this might end up, but a person from Germany who has views that I vehemently disagree with during the 1940s, who dies and then wakes up in hell and discovers that there's a war in the afterlife happening between various sects of demons to basically like mount the apocalypse.
Okay.
And he becomes a knight or like a soldier in the devil's army. And all of the demons in this world, like in this afterlife, are all vampires ostensibly. Um, and it is kind of the equivalent of like the comic book version of Butt Rock. Like I love
Okay.
it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just like like all the time, and like Olivier Ledoux, like he draws each panel individually and then digitally composes everything. So it's all painted, but each panel is drawn like this big. So it's super duper dense artwork.
Amazing.
Um,
Huh.
yeah, it's really cool. And like that book to me is the perfect amount of, it's kind of stupid. Like, why are zombies and ghouls and vampires in hell? I don't know. Because
Why
because it's
not?
Why not?
commercial, I guess, and they're
Yeah.
trying to get people in the seats.
Yeah.
But it's also like it's philosophical. It's about kind
Mhm.
of art. Can you come back from being someone who's made mistakes? You know, is it is the human soul something that can be permanently broken, or can it be mended? And just lots of
Hmm.
fun, you know, Millsian commentary in the book as well. And also just like, you know, silly, goofy things like a giant pirate ship, you know, run by vampire pirates, like
Mhm.
dropping bombs over like Victorian London and stuff. Like, it's cool. Uh,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. No, I think one thing that also stood out about Night Hunters I liked was, on top of the sort of vibe that I like about that cyberpunk world, there is a strong sort of emotional story as well. You have these two brothers that end up on either side of the law. Like one becomes a criminal, one becomes a cop, and like they cross paths, and like it's it's not subtle, and I don't think a book like this should be subtle if you're making a point and like making political
Mhm.
commentary, but it makes it engaging in a way that I don't think it would have been, or it needed to be, to get me to, to really engage with the book.
Yeah.
And I think again, like I love this sort of lack of subtlety. Again, speaking of Pat Mills, I adore Nemesis the Warlock because of that. There is no subtlety in
Oh,
that
yeah.
book, and that
Totally.
is just
Yeah.
balls
No
to the
subtlety.
wall, the most metal comic imaginable, and it's better because of that. If he tried to be subtle with it, it would not work.
Yeah. Yeah, the lack of subtlety actually, I think, you know, Alexis and I are big genre film hounds, you know,
Mhm.
underground stuff. And we talked a lot about Albert Pune. Like we were like, we're gonna make what if Albert Pune made a bootleg 2000 AD movie? So like our thing
Yes.
was what you know, it wasn't gonna have any subtlety. It was gonna have the lack of subtlety from Pat Mills, but it
Mhm.
also was gonna have this kind of like strange, aggressive, we're gonna make it happen. It might not be good, but we're gonna make it happen approach that Albert Pune's movies have.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it was really jarring to put that book out because to me it wasn't subtle like at all, and it was like this unthinkable thing. You know, like
Mhm.
what is the furthest thing that we can do to make fun of the situation that we're in now? And then it came out in 2020 and or 2019, 2020, 2020, I think.
Mhm.
Mm.
And it was when there was all like Black Lives Matter riots across the country
Yeah.
and well, protests, I want to be
Yeah.
clear.
Mhm.
Riots
Yeah.
is the language of the oppressor. Um and you know, like there was so many like just constant news footage of just like Gestapoed, you know, jackbooted police officers marching through the streets. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
it was terrifying, and it really felt like, oh my god, this is so much worse than the joke that I was making about how we're being oppressed, like
Yes.
fully.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was a little jarring, and I think the single issues reflect that too. Like if you read the single issues, in the back of all of them, there are like these essays from me that just get like so just increasingly more depressed and freaked out over the course of
Yeah.
the run.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, you couldn't have predicted something like that to come out, like, as you're like, "I have this
Right.
idea because 'cause I'm starting to see things," and then it, like, actually comes to fruition, like,
Yeah.
unbelievable. I feel like there was a lot of fiction that was coming out around that time that, like, suddenly had to go, "Oh, shit, what did we actually write? Did we, like, will this into existence?"
Right.
Totally.
Just terrifying. I can't imagine, to be doing something like
Yeah.
that, so